Looks like it's going to be all right today if I don't bump it. Well, good morning, everyone. My heart's kind of drawn back to a comparison of this pre-flood record of Enoch and the Bible, especially as it relates to the end of the age. I don't know, sometime about 8 or 9 years ago, I got a little interested in the book of Enoch, and I just started reading it, and it just so happened that I had just finished reading the Old Testament prophets, and I found more about the second coming of Christ and the end of the age in the Old Testament prophets than I did the New Testament. And so it's like when I started reading this book, just some things started jumping out to me that I just read this somewhere. It's just said different. And so what I did is I started putting some stuff together a long time ago. I just kind of stored this up. I've got some research that I just kind of did on my computer. I may have taught this once about 8 years ago, and it's different today than what I would have said back then, even because there's some more comparisons that come to mind, some better comparisons, and so I would say things that are different. But I just want to introduce you to this subject. I just want to. This is why I'm interested in it. It's because Jude quoted from Enoch. And so this is verse 9 of the book of Enoch. And it says, "Behold, he comes with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment upon them and destroy the wicked and reprove all the carnal for everything which the sinful and ungodly have done and committed against him." And so in Jude 1, verse 14 and 15, he says, "And Enoch also, the seventh from Adam." So this is how old this book is. He was seventh from Adam. Okay? "Prophesied of these, saying, Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment upon all, to convince all that are ungodly among them of their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, and all of their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him." And so this book is so old that it had to be on the boat with Noah. It had to be on the ark to survive to the new world. Now, they dig up stuff, but I don't know. I kind of doubt they're digging up stuff, pre-flood stuff that, I don't know, maybe on table stones, something might survive. I don't know. I do know that a copy of this was found with the Dead Sea Scrolls and have been found with scriptures. Now, copies of this is all over, and they're all not exactly the same. It's a very old book. And so my feeling is I wouldn't argue that it's on the level of Scripture. If someone believes it's on the level of Scripture, I wouldn't argue that either. What I would do is I would just ask that you exercise caution if you're going to read it and verify what you're reading by the Holy Scriptures, because many of the things that are written in the book of Enoch can be verified by the Holy Scriptures. And so if Enoch says something and an Old Testament or New Testament prophet says it too, then we have verified that this has survived. This is something Enoch was told a long, long, long time ago, before the flood. Okay, a very long time ago. And so any damage to the accuracy of this record, would have been from Noah to Jesus, or really, better said, from Noah to Moses, because we know how well the scribes took care of the scriptures and how careful they were with all the scriptures of the prophets. And so that's why they're so well preserved, and there's no contradictions between manuscripts found in one place and in another. They were very careful with it. So when these things were delivered to the hands of those scribes, it got took care of real well. And what survived, I would think that. So I'm just saying, whatever hits this thing probably took those hits between Noah and Moses, right? When he got off the ark and Moses. Because this thing would still have to be written and collected until it was given in the hands of the scribes. So I don't know. I'm not saying that I hold it myself on the level of Scripture, that I think that everything in there, that somewhere along the way, some scribe didn't think he knows what this is and put his opinion in there just to fix it. I can't guarantee you something like that didn't happen. Okay? But what I can guarantee you is if you can confirm it with the Holy Scriptures, then it's true and it survived. I mean, that's reasonable, right? Okay. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Now, what we're going to do is we just read verse 9, and we showed that the New Testament prophets quoted from it. And we're going to back up to verse 1, and I'm just going to show you what is in the first 8 verses of this book, which is pretty amazing. Okay? This is the opening verses showing the parable. It's just identical to me to the parable of the tares. And so whatever Enoch wrote here in verse 1 and verse 2 is what Jesus taught in Matthew 13. So it says, the words of the blessing of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect. Now I'm going to tell you up front that Enoch makes a distinction that we probably wouldn't make, or we would say it different. The elect in the book of Enoch are those that are chosen to be protected in the time of tribulation and to go on to the new earth. And he calls the rest the righteous, which is probably not something we would do. These are those that are left out of the tribulation that need refinement, or maybe they're lukewarm. In other words, they call themselves Christians. They consider themselves Christians. They may even be saved, but they're unrefined, so they didn't get the level of protection that others did. And so he makes that distinction. We would probably say it different. The New Testament says it a little different too, but we're going to make that comparison also. So it says these words of the blessed Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect, and the righteous. So he makes a distinction between the elect and the righteous, who will be living in the day of tribulation. Now this tribulation, we will be able to prove, is the tribulation when Satan and the fallen ones are cast to the earth, and they get 3.5 years where they persecute everyone, and you take the mark, or you die, or whatever, or you stay in hiding, whatever. It is that time that he's talking about, that 1260 days that the book of Revelation talks about. So he says that this book is for those who would be living in the days of tribulation, when all the wicked and godless are to be removed. Now Jesus talked about the wicked and the godless being removed from the earth when he talked about the parable of the tares. So he's shooting right down to this time that Jesus is talking about, which this parable of the tares is like the final act. It's like the tribulation is over, and the wicked are getting gathered one place, and the elect are getting gathered another. Say, but the parable of the tares kind of focus on what happens to the wicked, while other verses like Matthew 24 talk about the angels being sent and gather the elect. It's kind of like the opposite of the tares, right? And so when Jesus talked about the angels, the trumpet sounding, the angels being sent and gathering the elect, that's different than what Jesus talking about in the parable of the tares. The angels are sent and the wicked are gathered out. See, it's a different event. The saints are gathered before the tribulation, and the wicked are gathered up and burned at the end of the tribulation. Everything's got to go for the new earth to be created. See, everything that's not His has got to go. And the saints are actually gathered up for the world to be destroyed. And we can know that because the Bible, John clearly saw New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven as a bride adorned for the husband. That's the church, y'all. A city can't be his wife. The children of God are in the city. That's why she's adorned as a bride for her husband. So that's what that is. That's New Jerusalem coming back to the new earth with the saints of God who are going to populate it in New Jerusalem. And so this is what he's saying, that when all the wicked and godless are to be removed in this last time. See? And so he says, and he took up this parable and said, Enoch, a righteous man whose eyes were opened by God, saw the vision of the Holy One in the heavens, which the angels showed me, and from them I heard everything, and from them I understood as I saw, but not for this generation, but for a remote one which is for to come. He's saying the book that he's writing will be for the end of time. It says that in the opening salvos of this book. This old book, he said it would be for the end of time. A remote generation, far, far, far away. That he's calling that would be for those that would be living in the tribulation. So the book was meant to survive. We can surmise that already, because this book was written for those in the final age, at the end of the age. Okay, that's what it's written for. So when we just look at what he's saying, that this is a time both of the tribulation and when all the godless and the wicked are removed. So Jesus came, and I took this from the Darby version, y'all, and the only reason why I did that is because they actually translated "end of the world" as "end of the age," which is the correct translation. You can look it up in your Strongs or your Bullingers. That word "world," the Greek word for that is age. And so they actually translate it that way, and I just used this modern version to eliminate confusion from that. So this is what Jesus said in Matthew 13, verse 36 to 41. His disciples came and they asked him to expound to us the parable of the darnel, or the tares of the field. But he answering said, "He that sows the good seed is the Son of Man." He's saying, that's me. I came to sow the good seed. "And the field is the world, and the good seed, these are the sons of the kingdom." So the good seed is those that become the children of God. He says, "But the darnel, the tares, are the sons of the evil one." So these are children of the devil. He says, "And the enemy that sowed them is the devil. And the harvest is the completion of the age." And that's why I chose this version. He's saying that the harvest is at the very, very, very end of the age. And he said the harvestmen are the angels. So this is a time when angels are actually sent to gather out the wicked, so that, and you know what? I'm not saying that most of them aren't going to be dead already from the seals, the vials, and the trumpets, but whatever's left, they will be gathered out, and the world will be recreated. It will be destroyed, melt with fervent heat, and recreated for a new earth. He says, "And then as the darnel is gathered and is burned in the fire, thus shall it be at the completion of the age." These here are gathered out, and this would be the hellfire that he's talking about. The children of the devil, they will get that same doom that the devil and his angels are going to get. He says, "Then the Son of Man shall send his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all offenses and all those that practice lawlessness." None of that can remain. Everything's got to go. And then he says of the children of the kingdom, "Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of the Father. Who has ears to hear, let him hear." And so there will be a time for just the children of God to be on earth, and that will be all that is here. And so we're just showing that he's saying before even the flood, before Noah, he was teaching the things that Jesus came teaching. This is something he was shown. Now there's a couple of things he said about his experience. He said one was there were heavenly visions and angels that were showing him. But just like Paul had a heaven visit, he had one too. He saw the tree of life. And we're going to cover that today. It's not uncommon. Paul said he was caught up to the third heaven, paradise. And there were others as well that had this heaven experience. So he had, I believe, a heaven experience as it relates to what we'll see written here. Okay. Now this is verse 3, and we're just looking at Enoch saw both the day of Moses and Mount Sinai and the second coming of Christ. So these are two big events that was in his future, that when God himself would come down to Mount Sinai and dwell there. And also he saw the second coming of Christ way past his first coming to the very end. And this is the way he mentions it. In verse 3 he says, "Upon their account I spoke and conversed with him who will go forth from his habitation, the holy and mighty one, the God of the world." And this is of course Jesus. He says, "Who will hereafter tread upon Mount Sinai." And so that's what he did. That's where Moses brought all the children of Israel to meet him, was on Sinai. And he says he will appear with his host. Now this is a different event when Jesus comes in heaven with his whole army. This is right in Revelation chapter 19, beginning about verse 11, I think, where Jesus comes with the white horse. They're all on white horses. His whole army is with him. So he's appearing with his host. So he's referring to two events that were in the future and be manifested in their strength of his power from heaven. So he's coming in his strength this time. For his first coming, he didn't come in the manifestation of his strength, and he was killed. But in the second coming, he's coming in the manifestation of his strength. He's coming as a lion. And so, and it says, and shall be afraid, and the watchers, this is because the fallen ages, shall be terrified. And so he's saying that that all that is left, they know the end has come, the fallen ones. Because at some point, the fallen ones are coming here. They're getting cast down out of heaven. Revelation 12 says that. And when they come into this dimension, they can be destroyed, just like they were destroyed the first time when they were here. And they were there was creations coming where they had taken wives, and there were giants. They were killed too. They can be killed, and some of them are said to be in chains under the earth, and for the last time. Some of those still in this dimension. They've been in this dimension before, but the rest of them are coming. And that's what the final battle is all about. Okay? And so he's saying that when he appears in his strength and he comes with his army, they're going to be afraid. So when we look over here to Exodus, we can see that these things are something that has taken place and will take place according to the Scriptures. In Exodus 19, verse 10 and 11, so the Lord said to Moses, go to the people and tell them they have 2 days to get ready. They must set themselves apart wholly. Have them wash their clothes and be ready by the day after tomorrow. On that day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai. That's exactly what he said he would do. Hereafter he would tread upon Mount Sinai. He will come down on Mount Sinai as all the people watch. And then this other part here, where he manifests in his strength from heaven with all his hosts. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man come in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, and he shall send his angels. So he's coming with the host of heaven, with the angels. And he says he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So see, the parable of terror is focused upon the wicked being gathered out. This verse is focusing upon the elect being gathered. Now, we just want to, I call you to remember now how Enoch is putting a difference between the elect and the righteous. Now, we would probably say it different, but the elect is what's gathered. Okay? The angels are sent to gather the elect. Okay? And look, I'm not saying that none of them are going to be evacuated, because I believe some of them are. But some of them are gathered here for missions, to run missions. There's a harvest that's still got to take place somewhere in this, say. So in this 3.5 years, there are things still going on. God's got plans. And I don't know what all his plans are. But I know that there's a harvest, because that's in Revelation 14. There's some harvest work to do. And so these are gathered by angels. Angels are gathered. Angels gathered the elect, is what he says they gather. Now, you could think that can just be about one of those events, and it may very well be. This very thing may be that when some of the elect are gathered up. That may be what that is. To be evacuated before trumpets, vials, and seals are poured out upon the earth. Say. But those that are here, there will be special places that's talked about in Revelation 12 where they'll be safe and the water won't be poison or whatever. Because the Lord said he'll actually feed them there. That's what's in the Bible. That's what he's going to do. Okay, let's go to this is down through verse 5 when the watchers are the fallen ones, okay? Enoch saw some people who are saved perish because they were not chosen for the new earth. Now see, this is the tricky language I was telling you about. In Enoch 1 verse 6 it says, great fear and trembling shall seize them even to the ends of the earth. The lofty mountains shall be troubled and the exalted hills depressed, melting like a honeycomb in the flame, and the earth shall be immerged. That's a word we wouldn't really use today, but I Googled it and it is a word. So it says the earth shall be immersed, and all things which are in it perish, while judgment shall come upon all, even upon the righteous. So see again, you see how he's calling the righteous as some that judgment comes upon. And but as it pertains to the elect, he said, we're going to see in the next slide that there's something different planned for the elect. Okay? But then the scriptures will talk to us that way too, and we'll cover that in a moment. So when we look at what he's saying about what happens here, about this whole thing, this time of great fear and trembling, it's like Jacob's trouble and other things, fearful sights that Jesus talked about. Great fear and trembling will seize them. But then he talks about the lofty mountains shall be troubled and the exalted hills depressed, melting like a honeycomb. When we look at this verse right here, this is what Isaiah 64 described. Oh, that thou wouldest rend the heavens, that thou wouldest come down, and the mountains might flow down at thy presence. Flow down, just like he's saying here, the melting. And he says, as when the melting fire burneth, and the fire causeth the waters to boil, to make thy name known to thy adversaries, that the nations may tremble at thy presence. I mean, that is so uncanny, similar to exactly what Enoch was told in the opening salvos of this book. I mean, it's the same, just different words. And also in 1 Peter 4, verses 17 through 18, as he talks about judgment coming upon the righteous, which would be his church. Well, that's the house of God. He says that the time has come that judgment must begin at the house of God. And if it begin first at us, he says, then what shall be of them that obey not the gospel? What will be the end? What shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel? So he says, if the righteous scarcely be saved. Now I'm just going to tell you right now, this word scarcely doesn't mean the righteous just screech through and barely make it. That's not what that means. This word means with much difficulty. And this Greek word is used in other places, like when Paul was in a storm on a boat, and it says that he scarcely made it to shore, or with much difficulty made it to the shore. It's the same Greek word. With much difficulty he made it to the... They made it, just they had to come against the waves and the wind and the storm. Well, we all do that. We come against the waves and the wind and the storms of life, but we don't just barely make it. I mean, we persevere because we're the elect. We don't quit and surrender and go into sin or try to find comfort in some drugs and alcohol, and we don't do all that. So it's not like we didn't do it without difficulty. We did it through the difficulty because we learned to rely upon Jesus. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to either learn to rely upon Jesus to get through the storm, or you're going to be overcome by the storm. So he's just saying that the righteous, through much tribulation and difficulty, they're saved. He says, where shall the ungodly and sinner appear? These are people that are not even trying. See, they don't know him and they're not trying. So people who are not overcomers, who are considered his church, are here counted with the righteous, probably because they're lukewarm or unrefined or whatever. But he's just saying that judgment begins at the house of God. He says he starts with us. And he shakes the church, doesn't he? The shaking that the Bible talks about, the great shaking, it's for the church and the world, right? Shakes the church first, and then the world maybe. So this is just what he's pointing out, that there is a way back here when he's writing, he saw this episode here, and he saw too that the Lord would shake his church, and that judgment would begin at his own house. And so to me, this language is the same. He's just, the righteous here are just those that are in his house, considered to be Christians, okay? And I'm not saying that they're not redeemed. I'm just saying they're unrefined, maybe stubborn, okay? So let's see what else he says. Enoch saw some people who are saved perish because they were not chosen for the new earth. Now, see, this is a tricky subject, but it's something that the Scriptures talk about. And I'm going to show that to you today. In Enoch 1:6, it says, great fear and trembling shall seize them, even to the ends of the earth. The lofty mountains shall be troubled, and the exalted hills depressed, melting like a honeycomb in the flame. And the earth shall be immersed, and all things in it perish. So this being immersed is just really submersed into trouble, submersed into all kinds of trouble. Everything both the enemy and the Lord brings upon it, because the Lord himself opens the seals. The one that loves us and gave himself for us, he pops the seals. Okay? And so there's got to be a plan for the righteous. So the earth is immersed into this tribulation. He says, and while the judgment shall come upon even all the righteous. And so I want to just focus on these two things right here. And we're going to look at Revelation 12. Okay? Just a few verses, beginning in verse 6. And the woman, which we can see the woman is the church from just looking at who he says they are. They're the ones that keep the commandments of God, okay, and have the testimony of Jesus. That's who the woman is. It's not Israel. Sorry. That's what all the preachers want to say. But it's who he says it is. It's those that are keeping the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. Does Israel have the testimony of Jesus? It disqualifies them, okay? That's not who the woman is in Revelation 12. Sorry, but it's just not. And so the woman fled into the wilderness where she has a place prepared of God. So this is the church that is here, not evacuated. There's a place he prepares for that church to go. And he says that he's going to feed her there for the 1260 days. Now that 1260 days is how long Satan has to build and rule his kingdom. It's 3.5 years or 42 months. It is the time of the mark of the beast. It is the time. Okay? And so he's saying that he has a place prepared for his people where he's going to feed her. Okay? And so this is here. Do you think he needs to feed you in heaven? If you don't eat in heaven, are you going to die? Y'all, I'm just saying, this is for here. If you look at the scriptures and let it speak and don't ignore any part of it, it'll tell you what it's saying. And so this woman has a place prepared where she's fed of God. Okay? And it's for this 1260 days that Satan has to build his kingdom and to rule on the earth. It says, and to the woman, so verse 14 talks about a supernatural removal for some. And to the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, this place that he prepared to feed her, where she is nourished for a time, times and a half a time. Now this time, times and a half a time, you can count it up, it's 3.5. Time, times, half time. 3.5 years. It's just a sneaky way of saying 3.5 years, which is the same 1260 days, because 1260 days is 3.5 years. That's all he's saying. And so this language is chosen and used to kind of hide it from people who just want to believe what they want to believe. But anyone that wants to understand it, they're just riddles. You can understand it. And so this woman was given wings to get to this place where she can be nourished during this time. And this is the time where Satan is cast to the earth. It is in this chapter where there's war in heaven and Satan and the fallen ones are cast to this earth. Okay, and when he's cast, then he goes after the woman. Now we skipped the part about the war, I think. Yeah, we skipped the part about the war in heaven between 6 and 14 when he's cast to the earth. But while he's here, the serpent cast out of his mouth water, a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. So he tries to get to this woman that's in this place prepared, but he can't do anything to her. She's safe. And the earth helped the woman. The earth opened her mouth, swallowed up the flood, which was cast out of his mouth. And he says, and the dragon was wroth with the woman, and he went to make war with the remnant of her seed. Now that's everyone that's not in this place. This is the same distinction that he's making here. Okay? There's the elect. They go one place, and then there's the rest that go another. Some of them are in the safe place, some of them are not. And so when he goes to make war with the remnant of her seed, those are the ones that are unprotected. Because we know from Revelation some of them get killed. Why? Because they cry out even in heaven saying, when are you going to avenge our blood? Okay, we know that that's going to happen. I mean, Revelation says that too. But he says that the ones he goes to make war with are those that keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. Some of those get refined as soon as this kicks off and they get into gear. Okay? And they withstand. They stand up against what's happening. And they may lose their lives for that. You know, sometimes people just really rise to the occasion when they've just been lukewarm. They can be lukewarm before and then rise to the occasion as soon as something happens, you know. And that just I don't know, just people really shine sometimes when there's really trouble. People you didn't expect to shine start to shine. And so I don't think these are bad people. Okay? That I just think that Enoch saw it and the Bible shows it that way. And I don't know God's reasons for who goes here and who goes there. I can't even speak for him as concerning all that. I'm just doing the best I can based upon what's written. Okay? So, let's go to verse 7. Now this is where he starts to talk about the elect, see? But to them shall he give peace, and he shall preserve the elect. So see how he talks about judgment coming on the righteous, but then the elect are preserved. He makes a distinction there. And I think the Bible is making that distinction, and that's why we chose this Revelation 12 to show that it's just said different. It's said different, but it's true. Some went to the place prepared, and some were not there, and Satan went after the remnant of her seed, right? And so when we looked at this, he said he'll preserve the elect and towards them exercise clemency. Something's different with those that are elect. And he says, then shall all that belong to God be happy and blessed, and the splendor of the Godhead shall illuminate them. Now this is something else that's in the Bible. I'm gonna have to cover this. I mentioned this to y'all a week or two ago. But the Bible prophesies that the elect are going to shine. Those that he chose are going to shine. And it's not just a metaphor. It's something that can be seen. If you'll listen to what the Scriptures are saying, it's evidence. And that's why I said, don't believe anyone claiming that they've been baptized by the Holy Spirit. That there was manifestations when it was poured out on Pentecost. There's going to be manifestations again. And when these manifestations are going to be something that can be seen like they were before. And well, you can believe someone that's shining with the glory of God, but just someone that's just claiming that, you know, the Bible says there's going to be false prophets. So why would you believe someone that's just claiming that? See, and so when we look at this, he talks about the clemency for the elect being preserved, and then this time that follows, being happy and blessed. And that's bringing us to that new world. That's where I see the happy and the blessing is. Now we might experience some of that in these places prepared too. I mean, I think he's going to do something really great there, and he could be talking about that as well. I'm not the authority on it. I'm just interpreting, okay, the best I can. And so when we look at this, we're just pointing out that whenever this place prepared where she's fed and given wings to fly here, where she's nourished and Satan can't get to her, that sounds exactly like what we're reading here. They're being preserved, and he's exercised clemency toward them. There's something. These elect are getting something that others didn't get, that Satan went after. But they're all his children, okay? And I don't know, the whole criteria, opinion would be, you know, a matter of refinement or, you know, or lukewarmness. We know the lukewarm's out. We know that. But their lukewarmness could very rapidly change into something very committed once tribulation starts and they need God. You know, because right now, it's a lot of money. There's a lot of, you know, stuff. I mean, we're not hungry. We're not needy. We all got way more stuff than what we need. And if we got good enough friends, they'll come throw some of it away for you, right? Like 5 garbage bags is what I threw in the dumpster this morning from Pam and Kelly cleaning out my house for all the stuff Cindy stored up. So I mean, we have more than what we need. And there's a big joke around my house: is the can of beans? How many years is the Best Buy date? Is the Best Buy date gone? And so Alan said the beans were pretty good. They were, what did I say they were? 2024? No. They were. 2023. There must have been one of the newer cans. No, that's still. Was it 22? I think so. 2022. Yeah, so we got way more than what we need, and we're just not eating it. It's just kind of sitting there. So yeah, there's a time though when things might be most scarce, because does the Bible prophesy a time of famine? Yeah, it does. It does. You know, and we're just looking at. This is the first 7 verses in the book of Enoch and what he's saying. And yet it is the same thing that we can see the last book of the Bible, the last thing that John wrote, though, the book we have that's the newest to us, you know, is the book of Revelation. And so this book, the last book of the Bible, is saying what the earliest scriptures we can find. You know, the earliest record we can find is saying the same thing. Just different words, but it's saying this is what's going to happen in the end. You know, I mean, he's hearing and being taught in heaven that the elect are going to find clemency and be preserved, but he's not told how. And then when we get over to Revelation, John is actually telling us how. That's what he's doing, isn't it? This is how they're preserved. This is how Satan couldn't get to them. So, it's what he's saying is true. Now, we already looked at verse 9. That was the prophecy of Jesus coming in the clouds. But I wanted to show you this part about the illumination. Okay, this is verse 7 and 8. And we've read this about the elect. It says, "Then shall all that belong to God be happy and blessed, and the splendor of the Godhead shall illuminate them." It is really a different way of saying it, but he says the same exact thing in Isaiah 60. A time that the prophets prophesied, "Arise, shine, for thy light is come." But what caused this light? The glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. It's the glory of the Lord that's causing the light in the people. He says, "For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people." So this is the time of the end when gross darkness covers the earth. Joel chapter 3 talks about that, gross darkness. Okay? And he says that this darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people, but the Lord shall arise upon thee. The Lord is arising upon the elect, and His glory is going to actually be seen upon you. And this is something that people can see and people are drawn to. It says, "The Gentiles shall come to thy light, and even kings," maybe some repentant kings, "to the brightness of your rising." And so this is a supernatural event. And there's some other things associated with it too that he talks about in verse 4 and 5. He says, lift up thine eyes round about and see, they all gather themselves together. They come to thee. Thy son shall come from afar, and thy daughters to be nursed at thy side. And then it's talking about gathering families back together. And then shall thou see and flow together, and thy heart shall fear and be enlarged, because the abundance of the sea shall be converted unto thee, and the forces of the Gentiles shall come to thee. So it even kind of sounds like a big harvest thing going on, doesn't it? Okay? So some of this harvest work could very well be, in the beginning of the tribulation, and those that refused. Because in Isaiah 65, he says, "Because I called and you did not answer, I'll number you to the sword, and my servants will eat, but you'll be hungry. My servants will drink, but you'll be thirsty. And you'll cry for sorrow of heart, but my servants are going to sing." So there's a time where it seems the gate is shut, and that the people have either chosen the Lord or took the mark, or they waited too long in indecision. And it just looks like there's a period of time where people can come. There's an invitation for them to come, And so I won't know exactly, if that opinion is correct until it's time, until, we see how the plan unfolds. But I'm excited to see what it is. I want to see what it is. I'm very happy for the things that are planned. And so anyway, he saw it. He saw that the splendor of the Godhead would actually illuminate them. And that's exactly what they're saying here in different words. Now, preachers today won't even believe that God meant what He said, so they'll try to make that mean something else. But I believe that this is going to be the case. That it will be just like Enoch said. They'll be illuminated. They'll shine. Okay. So when we talked about down here, about the splendor of the Godhead being illuminated, he mentioned that in Matthew 13, if you remember, when he talked about the parable of tares. He talked about this last thing. I didn't point it out then when we were there. "Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father." There's something else that's going on there, that those elect are still shining as the wicked are removed. See? And so he mentions it too. Jesus mentioned it too in the parable of the tares. Okay? Now the tree of life in the new earth. Now Enoch got to saw the tree. Now I believe he had a heaven visit. That's what I believe he did. And he saw this tree. And Michael was his escort. And this is a very, very neat conversation that I wanted to share with you. This is leading up to it. This is Enoch's guided tour. He says he went from the place that he was there to another place, and he saw a mountain of fire flashing both by day and night. And I proceeded towards it and perceived 7 splendid mountains, which were all different from each other. Their stones were brilliant and beautiful, and all were brilliant and splendid to behold, and beautiful was their surface. And 3 mountains were towards the east, and strengthened by being placed one upon another, and 3 were towards the south, strengthened in a similar manner. And there were likewise deep valleys which did not approach each other. And the 7th mountain was in the midst of them. In length they all resembled the seat of a throne. And so he's just talking about this row of mountains, and then these 2 rows of mountains, and this big mountain that looked like a seat or a throne. And so he says, and he says, and odoriferous trees surrounded them. And he said, among these was a tree of unceasing smell, nor of those which were in Eden was there one of all the fragrant trees which smelt like this. Its leaf, its flower, and its bark never withered, and its fruit was beautiful. Its fruit resembled the cluster of a palm. And I examined, behold, the tree is goodly in aspect, pleasing in its leaf, and the sight of the fruit is delightful to the eye. Then Michael, one of the holy and glorious angels who were with me, and one who presided over them, answered and said, Enoch, why do you inquire respecting the odor of this tree? And why are you inquisitive to know it? And then I, Enoch, replied to him and said, concerning everything I am desirous of instruction, but particularly concerning this tree. He wanted to know about this tree. And he answered me, saying, that mountain which you behold, the stint of whose head resembles the seat of the Lord, will be the seat on which shall sit the holy and great Lord of glory, the everlasting King, when he shall come and descend to visit the earth with goodness. So he's coming here. This will be his throne. These mountains will be his throne. And he's saying when he visits the earth, that will be his throne. Okay? And he says, and that tree, of all the agreeable smell, not one of carnal odor, there shall be no power to touch until the period of the great judgment. Now listen. He's saying nobody can touch this tree until the period of the great judgment. What does that tell you, y'all? That we have access to the tree at the time of the judgment. And you remember, how all things are being made new? I believe that starts for the elect in those safe places. Because there's no pharmacies there. There's no doctors there. It's not like God's going to gather everybody sick saying, sorry, man, sorry about your medicine. Good luck with that. See, none of that would make sense. And so when he says that at the period of the great judgment, then nobody can touch it till then. When all shall be punished and consumed forever, this shall be bestowed on the righteous and humble. Remember that? What pops in your mind? The meek shall inherit the earth. Right? It's true. That's who he chose, the meek, to inherit the earth. And he says that this tree is going to be given back to them. The fruit of the tree shall be given to the elect. So that's what he's saying. The elect are going to be able to eat the fruit of this tree of life. For towards the north shall be planted in the holy place, and towards the habitation of the everlasting King. It's going to be planted in the new earth. Now, he talks to us a little bit about what this tree will do, the effect that it has on people. I don't know if it's a slide or not. We'll see. But it says, then shall they greatly rejoice and exult in the Holy One. The sweet odor shall enter into their bones, and they shall live a long life on the earth as your forefathers have lived. Now he's saying when we eat of this tree, that we're going to start living the lives as long as Enoch's fathers did. That's what he's just said. Do you know that our Holy Scriptures say the same exact thing in different words? I'm going to show that to you today. But isn't that amazing that this would be given to those people of the New World, and that this fruit would cause them to live as long as their forefathers have lived? Neither shall there, and he speaks of a change, neither in their days shall sorrow, distress, and trouble and punishment afflict them. This is a new place, y'all. And I bless the Lord of glory, the everlasting King, because he has prepared this tree for the saints, formed it, and declared that he would give it to them. Now, when we get over here to Isaiah 65, verse 17, where he starts talking about the new earth, look what he says. I create a new heaven and new earth. Past things will not be remembered. They will not come into mind. There will no longer be infant who lives for only a few days. All this infant death syndrome, no more dead infants, y'all. That's gone. He says, and there won't be an old man who doesn't live a long life. Whosoever lives to be 100 years old will be thought of as a child, be thought of as young. Whosoever dies before he is 100 years old will be cursed as a sinner. Now listen, there's something about, in the new world, there's a new covenant. I don't know what it is. It hadn't been given yet. But people, I believe, can die, but if they do, it's because they chose to be disobedient to the Lord. They chose a life of sin. So whatever that covenant is, it's going to include that. And he's just saying that people who live a long life, as long as they're meant to, if they see someone die, they will know that he's cursed as a sinner. So there is a curse attached to your own disobedience, to your own rebellion. And so it's not upon everyone like it was when Adam and Eve ate of the fruit of the tree. It was on all their offspring. Okay? So it says that they will not build homes and have others live there. They will not plant and have others eat from it. My people will live as long as trees. It's just another way of saying this right here. My people will live as long as trees. They'll live as long as Dina's forefathers. How old is those big redwoods? You know, that's what he's saying. My people are going to live as long as trees. And my chosen ones will enjoy what they've done. Whatever they build, it won't be taken by some enemy. It says, or by some tax collector. Okay? It says, they will never again work for nothing, and they will never again give birth to children who die young, because they will be offspring blessed by the Lord, and the Lord will bless their descendants as well. So it's a blessing upon all the descendants instead of a curse upon all the descendants. And so this is the way that he talks to us coming into the new earth, and he says it just a different way. That we're going to live as long as Enoch's forefathers. They'll live as long as trees. And because he's prepared this tree for the saints, formed and declared he's going to give it to them. Okay? Now, let's go just a little bit further. In verse 10 of Enoch 24, then shall they greatly rejoice and exult in the Holy One. And we saw this, that the sweet odor shall enter their bones, and they shall live as long as a long life on the earth as your forefathers. Neither in their days shall sorrow, distress, trouble punish them. And then he says, because he has prepared the street to give the saints. Okay, so we're just going to compare that to some things he said about the new earth and the tree of life in Revelation 22. He says, in the midst of the street of it, on either side of the river, there was this tree of life, which bare 12 manners of fruits, yielded her fruit every month, and the leaves thereof for the healing of the nations. And there shall be no more curse, but the throne of God and the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. And they shall see his face. They're going to see the Lord's face. And his name shall be in their foreheads. And we get down here back up to chapter 21, verse 3. I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men. In other words, Jesus is dwelling with us now. And we will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God. And he will wipe away all their tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. And they that sat upon the throne said, behold, I make all things new. That includes you. Make all things new. And he said to me, write these, because these words are true and faithful. So, I mean, my goodness, when we start to back up and compare these things, there's so many that he talks about. Even exulting in the Holy One, he talks about seeing his face here. He talks about God's going to wipe away their tears and then be with them. Because he says, then shall they greatly rejoice and exult in the Holy One. So they're rejoicing and exulting the Holy One because they're with him. And as he says here, then shall they live a long life on the earth as your forefathers. Well, if we just try to look at, there'll be no more death, as we saw, except where in the case of a sinner, someone that chooses because the choice is not going to be taken away. There may be something associated with a curse that you can bring upon yourself by disobedience. But he mentions here that there's no more death in otherwise. And he says, neither shall there be this sorrow, distress, trouble, or punishment. So neither sorrow nor crying. It's just real similar, very similar language, just saying it different. He's saying this old book, the oldest book we can find in the world, is saying this very same thing that the last book we were ever given is saying. That's all I'm pointing out. Just saying it different, but it's saying the same thing. Okay? As it attains to this tree, He's prepared this tree for these saints and formed it and declared He would give it to them. Well, here it is, y'all. The tree of life which bear these 12 manners of fruits and yielded the fruit of every month. The leaves were for the healing of the nations. It's for the nations, y'all. He's going to give it to them, just like He said. You know, and Ezekiel 47 is a little clearer. I mean, what it says about this is the leaves were for medicine. You know, there's a remedy maybe for something that may be associated with misbehavior. Okay, so because Ezekiel 47 talks about the tree of life as well. It's just not part of this study. Okay, chapters 46, 47, 49. There were some things I seen in this as I read through it that also really rang true with stuff I've read before in the Bible. And so we're just going to look at the rebellion of the kings of the earth, the wrath of God poured out, and a little bit more about the river of life and the new earth. And so in Enoch 46 verse 4, he says, He shall hurl kings from their thrones and their dominions, because they will not exalt and praise Him, nor humble themselves before Him, by whom their kingdoms were granted to them. In other words, the Lord Himself gave them these kingdoms, and they did not acknowledge Him, but exalted themselves, by whom their kingdoms were granted to them. And he says, the countenance likewise of the mighty shall He cast down, filling them with confusion. Darkness shall be their habitation, and worms shall be their bed. Nor from that their bed shall they hope to be raised again. Hope again raised, because they exalted not the name of the Lord of spirits. The king shall condemn the stars. This is the good angels. Okay, the stars in the book of Enoch are always the angels. Okay, and so he says that the king shall condemn the good angels of heaven and shall lift up their hands against the Most High. They're against Jesus and His angels, and shall tread upon the inhabitant of the earth, exhibiting all their acts of iniquity and their works of iniquity. Just exhibiting them, like putting them on display, because they're not ashamed of their wickedness. Sound familiar today? Sounds a whole lot like today. And their strength shall be in their riches, trusting in their riches that they don't need God. And they shall deny the name of the Lord of spirits, and shall expel Him from the temples in which they assemble. And so, you know what, y'all? I didn't know that I've talked this long already. I'm probably going to finish making this comparison, and I may try to pick this up next time that I talk and see what else I want to put with this section. But just to show you what Psalm says, the kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against His anointed, saying, Let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. It's just talking about how they want to break all of God's influence so that it has no influence upon society. They want to rid God from the schools and from government, from everything where He should rule. And even, if you can hear it, from His churches. They want Jesus gone out of the churches and replace Him with something else. I mean, this is just many of the things that they plan when they start trying to combine this new world religion. You know, it's a religion without Jesus. And so He's saying they want to break the bands of the Lord. They want all the things that all the influence the Lord has to be broken and to be cast away from them. Any restraints the Lord has placed upon people, they want to break those bands. But then it says the Lord's going to speak to them in His wrath and vex them in His sore displeasure. So this is all that Enoch said that he would do, that he would act. Okay? And it says, thou shalt break them with a rod of iron, and thou shalt dash them like a potter's vessel. Just imagine having a clay pot up and hitting it with a rod, and just watching it. The way he's saying, that's what he's going to do to the kings. That's what he said he would do, and that he would take their thrones from them. And so he warns them in Psalms 2, be wise now therefore, O ye kings, and be instructed, ye judges of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. So the warning from Psalms is there, that he is going to act. There's a day for them to act as the kings rebel against the Lord. Well, let's just stop right there for right now, y'all. And maybe the next time I'll back up and we'll start with the rebellion and start to study that. That's all I'm going to share with you today. I turn it over to the brother in charge.